What would you do in the event of a catastrophic emergency? Well, a new kind of civil defense drill is helping people prepare for exactly that. More than 1,000 people gathered in Tainan for the exercises that aim to include all of society. Reese Ayers reports.
Extinguishing fires after a massive explosion and rushing civilians to safety as a tsunami approaches. Simulations of disasters that pose very real threats to Taiwan played out in the southern city of Tainan at this new kind of whole-of-society civil defense drill. It's all part of President Lai Ching-te's campaign to better prepare the country for whatever comes.
我们目的是希望能够打造台湾社会的韧性，能够妥善的因应当大自然发生天灾地变的时候。
Over 1,000 people, a mix of civilians and civil defense experts, have joined the drills. But notably absent today is the military, which usually plays a big role in disaster response.
那主要是展现在地方政府及地方的民力，包括义警、义交这个民防，还有志工，他们对于发生灾难或者发生这个包括爆炸、包括海啸或是其他的复合性灾难的时候地方的因应状态。
One of the scenarios simulates an explosion at a tourist center that injures hundreds of people, with much of the focus on response times and setting up medical infrastructure at short notice. More than just demonstrations, these exercises simulate real-life disasters, forcing the civilians taking part to improvise and act in real time as if it was a real disaster. And the people joining these drills say participating is their duty as citizens of Taiwan, a country under constant threat from the forces of nature and China.
因为因应就是说有一些比如说灾难的时候，那医院可能没办法正常运作，那需要把一些民间的医疗人力那集中起来做一些统筹的规划运用。
因为我们就可能真的会面对战争的危险，当然不希望有这种战争的发生，但是以防万一，大家全民就是要互相扶持这样子。
Officials say this will be the first of many drills happening across the country as Taiwan does its best to prepare for the worst. Scott Huang, John Su, Jaime Ocon and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
Civil defense drills like these are becoming more central to Taiwan's defense strategy. But what does whole-of-society defense mean? To find out, Jaime Ocon spoke to Raymond Kuo, a security analyst with the Rand Corporation.
So Taiwan is jumping fully on this idea of a whole-of-society defense. What does that mean, and why is it important specifically to Taiwan?
So whole-of-society defense is actually part of a group of concepts which we might call total defense. You see this in a lot of different countries. Israel is probably the most kind of iconic example, but you also have many of the Baltic states, Finland, Singapore, even South Korea to some extent. The idea is that you're a small country facing a really big potential aggressor. How do you marshal the resources in order to be able to respond to this? How do you create defense in depth, especially when you don't have that much territory, you're facing a much larger opponent? Also, I think very critically, to be able to protect and shelter your own people. And then also to keep continuity of government operations. So not just where is your leadership, will they be okay, but also can you keep the lights on so that your society can still function, maybe at a lower level, but can still function despite a massive conflict coming at you.
When we look at the way that Taiwan responds to emergency situations like an earthquake or typhoons, we do see the military play a very big role in these kinds of operations. What is the benefit of letting the civilian side handle these kinds of situations?
So in an event of a military conflict specifically, you want your frontline troops to be at the front line. You know, if let's just say it's an invasion, well, you want the conventional forces, your best trained military forces, to be, fighting back on the beachheads and pushing the people and pushing the invaders out. The more that the military has to divert its attention towards, say, things like civilian protection or logistics, the less it's able to kind of move the most skilled troops up the chain to be at the point of combat. or points of combat. The more that reserve forces or civil society can take up some of these civilian protection, logistics and resources, sustainment missions, the easier, the more the Taiwanese military can flow those forces to where they need to be.
And how does this help the average person in Taiwan who's maybe looking at this drill for the first time and wondering, what should I be doing in the event of an emergency?
Well, so it helps in a number of different ways, right? One is just if the bombs are falling, where do people go? Where should they go? I don't know if I would be able to say, and I want to be clear, this is a really difficult thing. I don't think any country has ever had their civil defense system tested yet. Obviously major war, or I guess within the kind of the modern era. All the countries I mentioned earlier are still trying to figure their way through this. No one has a perfect answer. So at the very least, it's admirable that Taiwan is really the Lai administration is focusing on making this a priority.
That was Raymond Kuo with the Rand Corporation.